I talked about this before too, how I believe that after this election, a lot of people would be like, okay, now is our chance to save the Democratic Party. We got to go in there and really change things up. Look how bad, Hillary Clinton did. She got beat by the awful Donald Trump. So now is our chance to really reform it. So there is like the brand new Congress who's trying to get different people elected to Congress that will actually represent people. And I totally agree with what they're doing. But I don't agree with saving the Democratic Party. I think it's beyond saving. I really do. So I really don't care who's the DNC chair. I think that whoever's the DNC chair, even if they go into it with a righteous mentality, it's not going to mean anything. I could care less about Democratic leadership. I could care less about who's going to be leading the DNC. I think we got to go around the bastards. That's what I think. I don't think there is any way to actually reform the Democratic Party. They are willingly a corporatist party. They are willingly not a party that represents people.
Well, how much time do you think it will take to go around the DNC?
See, okay,
that's my question. How much time do you think it actually will take to go around the DNC, kind of form an actual power base? Because that's what has to be formed in order to, I guess, regain those seats.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the way you look at it, and really, I believe it is. Well, this thing is looked at so as going to be something so difficult because it started with Bernie Sanders' endorsement of Hillary Clinton. Like I said, a lot of people splintered from that endorsement. Some people stayed with Bernie and said, we're going to vote for Hillary. Some people said, forget that, we're voting for Trump. Some people said, forget that, we're going with Jill. Some people even went to Gary Johnson. Other people just completely withdrew from the political process. So there's a lot of, people out there just doing different things right now. And with the election of Trump, we still are unorganized. People that actually believe in progressivism, they're still unorganized. So I've heard that, people want to go through this brand new Congress. I've heard that people want to build their own new party. I've heard that people want to go through the Green Party. There's so many different avenues out there.
But see, that's the thing.
That's why it's looked at as very difficult. The only way that we could actually build a new party and actually create a stronghold, like something that's very strong and that we could actually compete with Democrats and Republicans, is if we got every single progressive leader together, progressive media like us, everybody else out there, and we actually had a conference. You know what I'm saying? To not just affirm ideas, but to actually create a plan of action. That's the only way I think we could actually create a new party. I'm
so
not.
There's no, you can't co-opt the Democratic Party with kind of Green Party attitudes. Okay.
No. Like I said, the Democratic Party is a failed party. There is no saving the Democratic Party because in saving the Democratic Party, what you would have to do is say, forget all other third options. And we know that the two-party system leads to our demise. We know that the two-party system leads to this leadership in both parties not representing us.
There's some actual talk and a lot of people expressing their thoughts about the Green Party and how there's no one progressive enough for the Green Party, and so we end up kind of getting ourselves into a quandary because maybe we price ourselves out the game. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's like this, man. Like you were talking about progressive purity and stuff like that, right? I don't need a saint. We don't need saints. We don't need candidates that have absolutely nothing wrong with them, that have never made a decision or said anything that was questionable, that could be criticized. We don't need candidates like that. I think the one thing, and I talk about this with Republicans as well, the one thing that we should all mandate is that our candidates are not bought. that they do not have strings to corporations and lobbyists and special interests. That's what we should mandate. That they are not corrupt. And I'm sorry to say, we can't change that in the Democratic Party. We can't change that. They're not changing it. They don't want to change it. The Republican Party doesn't want to change that as well. So it has to come from outside. It has to come from around them.
But like I said, like, how long will it take to build something like that? Well, that's the question.
That is the question.
Do we even have the time? Do we even have the time to even build something like that?
Well, let's put it like this. If the Democratic Party can't be saved, then what are we doing? We're wasting time. By even trying to go through them, we're wasting time. Like I said, I have no problem with what brand new Congress is doing. I have no problem with anybody that actually wants to run as a Democrat. But the party should not matter, and that's what we have to get ingrained in people's minds. It's not the party that matters. It's the positions. It is the ideology. It is the values of the candidate. So if that candidate has a D or a Z, some new party that begins with a Z, it doesn't matter. If they vote based on people, then legislation is going to get passed. It has nothing to do with, oh, you're going to have 45 Democrats and 55 Republicans in the Senate. No. What if like 10 of those Republicans thought the same way as these Democrats? The party means nothing. It's the ideas. That's what we have to get, like I said, into people's minds. That's why the two-party system needs to become a failed system. That's what I'm saying.
But
we just can't save the party. In trying to save the party, we're gonna save the two-party system and save corruption.
And the issue that I'm having is, it's not just the two-party system as far as I guess how politicians maneuver within it, mm-hmm. and how politicians interact with it.
Yeah.
My issue is the public.
Mm-hmm.
My issue is with the public, and we can splinter off all we want, but if the public is not with it, there's no way we can go around the DNC or around establishment politics. If the public is not with that, if the public does not have that mentality, it really doesn't matter, because the public is just as much invested in the two-party system, mm-hmm. as the politicians that uphold it.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
So how can we move forward, if the public is not with that type of mentality? You see what I'm saying? Because
media.
Well,
who controls the media right now? Who controls shaping our political environment right now? It is the corporate media.
Mm-hmm.
That's who's shaping it.
And it's still the even the lowest common denominator within that paradigm, mm-hmm. is still the public. Mm-hmm. If the public is still hooked on the corporate media and the corporate media isn't going anywhere, then it's going to be hard to galvanize people and kind of amass this support for a third party, so that we can go around the DNC. That's the problem. So everything that is mentioned, that's kind of acts as a big, massive curmudgeon, mm-hmm. In this system. And you mentioned it, the corporate media. The lowest common denominator is the public,
right? And
the public is making a choice to still be locked into it. There's just actually not enough people detached from it. So if the lowest common denominator doesn't want to get out of it, I'm just still not so sure there's going to be enough bodies available. I don't think there's going to be a big enough constituency, so that a third party can actually have enough, I guess, steam to get through and get around the establishment. I just don't think it's going to be there until the public gets on board, and we don't have that right now. And I don't know how fast we can get there when so much of the public is still locked into the corporate media
Well, you gotta get them unlocked,
even
though.
progressives and even so-called liberals.
But you got to get them unlocked. I mean, that's the only way. As long as they are feeding into corporate media and using that as a factor in determining their opinions, then yeah, nothing's gonna change. Absolutely nothing. So that is the key. As long as we don't change that, then nothing else changes. The two-party system will remain exactly the way it is right now, and you'll still see people talking about, oh well, third parties don't, come on, you can't really vote for them. It's all about the two-party system. Yeah, it's not perfect, but this is what we got. We live in the two-party system. You'll still hear that kind of ridiculous rhetoric.
Look,
we have to cut the cords to the corporate media. You have to do that.
Look at how this election played out. Look at how this election played out. Actually, not even this election. Like, how does every election play out? How does every election play out where the majority of the votes go to two candidates?
Yeah.
And this happens every single cycle. So what I'm saying is, it's like, it's not breaking the cycle of the system. It's breaking the cycle of the attitude we have that kind of upholds the system. And it's not just an attitude of, it's not an attitude that is cultivated through staying so locked into the corporate media. I honestly think it's bigger than that. To me, it's bigger than being cultivated by corporate media. To me, it's more about being cultivated by the entire apparatus that's connected to the corporate media. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no doubt, but who's the arm? Who's the arm that is, spreading that message, though? Who's doing the work of that apparatus? It's the media. They're the ones that are feeding the public the information that the politicians want fed to them. There is much a part of establishment politics as the actual politicians, as the actual parties. They do their bidding. The same corporations that are funding these candidates are what? They have ad spots on these cable channels, right? So it's one, like you said, it's one big apparatus. But the main thing is who's getting the attention of the public? It's the media. So as long as they have them brainwashed, as long as they have their eyes and their ears wide open, listening to their crap, then yeah, absolutely nothing changes. So that's the thing that has to be rectified before anything else does, really. So yeah, we could talk about a new party. We can talk about pushing the Green Party forward and, getting to a more parliamentary kind of system, something like that. Killing the two-party system, killing the Electoral College. We could talk about all of that. But if we don't have people actually listening to media that is in their best interest, then what are we doing?